I do want to just kind of run through the syllabus. Just it is not much different than fall, except we did have one exam in the fall and we have no exams in the spring. For those of you who are around in the fall, you might have mixed feelings about the projects, but I more or less think they were successful and were as effective as assessing performance as exams. So, hey, why have tests if you don't need to? So again, like in the fall, the test assessments are 75% of the grade, so it's 300 points out of 400. The other 100 points is essentially all homework. I split it out into two categories because there is the OWL homework itself, and then there are those worksheets, some of which we will do in class in the spring, all of which can be submitted digitally to my courses. So we are still kind of in 3 different splits, but at least those of you who are face-to-face are always face-to-face, so you don't have to remember what day of the week it is. You just have to decide you want to get out of bed at 7 in the morning. Because of the splits, the attendance is really not monitored. And so, you know, there's nothing you technically have to be here for. But again, if you've chosen to be here and are planning to be here, great. If you've chosen to be here and things have changed, it would be better if you change your registration to one of the other splits. So if somebody wants to actually attend in person, there's room. We just still have the limited seating availability because of the distancing. So all the Zooms will be recorded and posted to my courses. So you can always either review them later or watch them for the first time if you were not here live or live via Zoom. Again, if you were here in the fall with me, you're familiar with my quote unquote sprint structure. Again, this is just really a project management structure borrowed from software engineering, but essentially the course is broken up into 2-week blocks. So, you know, sometimes people say sprint, I don't know what that means. I say, think of it as 2 weeks. And so those 2-week periods essentially have 2 weekly assignments, and then there is essentially a capstone assignment, as well as a reflection. And really the whole point in the sprints is to get to the reflections, because it gives you a chance to revisit your method and decide whether or not things are going well or not. If you take it seriously and actually reflect and think about it, it is a way to improve your strategy. And I will say up front, Chem 2 is not Chem 1, by which I mean many, if not most people, pretty much coast through Chem 1 based on what they remember from high school. If you took AP, even usually Chem 2 will test the limits of what you might have done in high school. And so we do need a little different strategy sometimes in the spring as we get to multiple reactions. Essentially, all of the homework's online, but again, it sort of falls into 2 categories. There's the worksheets, which are posted to my courses and collected in my courses. And then there is the OWL homework. There is a message I see in the chat, so about the OWL. So let me try to show you the OWL. But the instructions for registering OWL on my courses. Again, if you had OWL in the fall, which most of you should have, you should not need to buy anything. You should not need to do anything other than essentially register for this class. which really means just going to OWL and clicking on any of the homework assignments. I have too many things open. Where is it? The easiest way to do it, again, especially if you already have OWL access, if you go under content, they're not all here, but for the first couple sprints they are. There is a tab which has each week's homework in it. If you click on anything, it will take you to this specific section. Oops. You can see it on the Zoom, but not in class because of the display settings. Right, so if you click on any one of those homework assignments, it will take you to this specific section in OWL. You really don't ever want to go to OWL directly to OWL, right? Because you can go to, stengage.com and get to OWL. The problem there is it doesn't know what class you're in. And so we'll start asking you for section number and whatever. If you go in this way, it knows the section number and everything. The only thing you really need is an account. Again, if you had it in the fall, you should still have it, right? And so all you should have to do is log in. If you don't have it from the fall, you can buy it through there or buy it in the bookstore and use the access code. But the way you really only want to access the OWL through my courses, at least especially the first time, because it then makes sure you're in the right class. Questions on that? Does that address the issue that was in the chat? Since I'm already signed up, I can't really show you anything further than that because it'll just take me to the homework assignment. But I will send out a link via email today. The Cengage rep is holding a help session for people who need to get hooked up. But again, it should be relatively trouble-free for anybody who had OWL in the fall. If you click on any of them, all you have to do is log back in. Questions on that? Anything? That is probably the first thing you want to do if you haven't already. Only because not only is the OWL homework there, there's also the ebook and the Think Well videos if you are at all interested in taking advantage of those as well. So if you hadn't, I would jump on that. If you didn't yet have a membership from the fall, you should be able to get 2 weeks free. So even if you're not quite ready to buy, I would still Sign up, get the 2 weeks, so at least you can see the homework, see the ebook, see the videos. You know, the videos vary in terms of how directly relevant they are to what we're doing here. Some of them are simpler than the way we might approach it, but they actually are pretty reasonable overall. So if you're looking for other video content, you can obviously go to YouTube, but those are coherently put together and tied to the textbook. So they have some advantages, and you've already got them if you've got OWL, so they're free anyway. In general, all homework is considered group work. I am not in any way, shape, or form concerned about who works with whom. This, of course, is both good and bad, right? It does mean you can find a smarter friend and get them to do most of the work. But, you know, ultimately that makes other things like the project harder, where you cannot so much collaborate. The projects will be papers. That doesn't mean they may not have some calculations involved. There will be approximately one per chapter. Although not starting for a couple weeks, I will throw out the first one this week. Think about projects. Again, if you were here in the fall, you know what I'm talking about. We'll tend to ask more in-depth questions about some core concepts. It's actually easier in the spring than it was in the fall to do this in a coherent fashion, because the material is, generally speaking, more coherent, right? Fall tends to be a survey of all the sort of chemical basics, right? From nomenclature to nuclear structure to electronic structure to molar mass to gram to mole conversions to balancing equations, right? Spring, with the exception of the first couple weeks, we're still sort of talking about physical properties, right? Spring is really all about chemical reactions, and in fact, mostly all about aqueous chemical reactions. So in that sense, the material is far more coherent as a subject, which means the projects can also be somewhat coherent, sort of the idea of essentially making it one gigantic problem or project in 5 parts. But it will kind of depend on how the first part goes. So stay tuned for details on that. All right, just so we're clear, and this did come up in the fall and will probably come up again. And sometimes the lines are fuzzy, so just to try to make the lines clearer, technically, it is possible to cheat on the homework, right? It is just too hard for me to track it. The only reason I even mention it is because I don't want to give you the false impression that finding the homework problem on the internet is not cheating. There was a whole class on this campus who was taken to task because they did just that. Somebody found it, posted it to Discord, everybody copied it, and hey, it was on the internet, that's legitimate. And I'm going to say it's sort of legitimate, at least in here, because I'm not really trying to police it, right? But technically speaking, you know, even if you were to find the answer on the internet, you would need to reference the fact that you found the answer on the internet. If you turn it in with just your name on it, it is plagiarism, right? I am not trying to police that. But again, please know, in all classes, just because I am letting it go, right, other people may make an issue about it, right? And so you need to be somewhat clear where the line is these days, because again, so much, especially in intro courses, so much content is out there on the internet. I mean, if you're taking a 400 level biochemistry course, you can find stuff, you know, but there's 20 people on every campus taking it. there's somewhere around 2 million people in chemistry at any one time. And so every textbook question, there's 25 different answers for it somewhere on the internet. And some of them are wrong, by the way. That's how I can tell. That's how I can tell who's sharing answers. When I get the same unusual wrong answer, I know somebody posted it on the Discord, right? But again, it is just simply too hard to police, so I'm not even going to try. The one set of assignments that is where is that message coming from? It's not on my screen. It's very weird. Could be on the computer up there, but there's nothing I can do with it. So we will have to sort of live with it. I can't even move it. Anyway, so the only place I would conceivably question your academic honesty is the projects. That does not mean, of course, that you can't work with each other, but we need to be clearer about what the line is between collaboration and plagiarism. So, if you are sharing content, it really needs to be referenced as to the source. So you cannot pass off your work as your work if it came from somebody else. We do use Turnitin on the submissions, and there were, quite frankly, in the fall, a couple cases where the match, was 80% or over on Turnitin, right? Which means there was a lot of lifting of content, sometimes from internet sources, sometimes from other people in the class. I do not think in general people are trying to plagiarize, but as I say, I think sometimes the line is fuzzy. Right, so if there's any question, please ask before you do it. Okay, the lab is a completely separate course. I know it's listed as a co-requisite, but it really is not. You can take the class without the lab and the lab without the class, which sometimes happens. So to that end, I don't know specifically what's going on in the lab at any point in time. That doesn't mean I can't answer chemical questions about the individual labs, but if you're trying to figure out if lab meets this week, I don't necessarily know unless somebody told me, right? If you want to know how something should be written up for lab, I don't necessarily know because I don't grade them and I don't teach it and I don't coordinate it. So by all means, you can ask me lab questions where it's chemical content related, but if you have mechanism issues about how the lab is running or how lab write-up should be done, or anything else, you need to discuss it with your actual lab instructor. In terms of getting outside help, there are free to you graduate student tutors available. I posted a link to the schedule, although it might still be the fall schedule, since I don't think it's been finalized yet, because of course the graduate students are still finalizing their schedule. I will tell you up front, they are a mixed bag. Not so much in terms of their ability to do chemistry, but in terms of their willingness to be helpful. As part of their graduate student experience, they're required to serve as tutors, right? So they generally show up, but they are, the bad ones, dismissive, and they will say, well, I can't help you with that, or I don't know, when in fact they probably could help, even if they don't exactly know, right? They are chemistry graduate students, right? If that happens, please let me know so we can remind them that it is their duty. But some of them are very, very good as well. So as I always say, if you're looking for help, try a few of them, schedule permitting, of course, and find the one that actually is trying to be helpful. You can see me. I will post office hours at some point later this week once I'm sure of what my schedule is. And of course, there are 267 of you at last count, if you count all three sections, so you can somewhat help each other. I noticed somebody already posted, I think, the Discord in the chat. We do also have a couple other helpers. Is Sophie here?
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Hi, there she is. Sophie was the SI in the fall also, right?
Yep.
And so if you were here in the fall with me, you may know Sophie already. She's our SI leader. And so she will be offering supplemental assistance. I don't know if you want to say anything, Sophie. She will eventually reach out to you and schedule sessions at times to be determined. Anything you want to add to that, Sophie?
I think that pretty much covers it. Just, I would really appreciate if you could skim the email, because that has a lot more information that I just wouldn't take the time to say in class. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. So she will be running outside help sessions. And, you know, a lot of people told me how helpful she was in the fall. So there's that. We will also sort of have 3 LAs. Again, you may be familiar with LAs from the fall, either in chemistry or somewhere else. They will not be in class at 8 a.m. for a number of reasons, one of which is the fact that we're in 3 different splits. But we do have 3 LAs. Olivia Martin, who was one of the LAs in the fall, if you were with me. Molly Resch, who was actually, I think, an LA for Dr. Bailey, if you had her in the fall. And Eugene Ham, who's brand new. They will not work in class. So if we have worksheets or something, it's going to be just me. But they are providing support to the afternoon section, and therefore I asked that we open up their outside help sessions to the morning class as well. And so they will have, again, outside of class help sessions where, you know, they can help on projects or homework or just basics. Any general questions? Sir? I'm really not that fussy. I go by almost anything. My theory is, I'm told that I should force you to call me Dr. Lanzafame, because otherwise I undermine my female colleagues, but they're not here. So I don't really care, because again, you know, you could be in the back of your mind calling me all kinds of
All right, guys, my name is Owen Wong. I'm your new teacher. This has been Chemistry 142.
F in the chat for Joe.
F in chat. It's nice to meet y'all.
Rest in peace, Joe.
Biggest of F.
And this is why you always come to class early, so you get to be the professor when he leaves early for some reason. All right, so today we're going to be talking about IMFs. They're those things that go between the molecules and hold them together. Yep, this has been chemistry. Camera on. Well, then I'd have to get my camera from my bag because I haven't unpacked it. And that would take effort. All right, give me a second. What's young guy doing? Should I do that YouTuber thing? What was that?
Well, I'm back. We'll see how long I stay. Okay, again, the sprints are just an organizational tool, but again, the real strength of it and the reason we use them in software engineering is because it allows you to reevaluate your methods on a regular basis. For software teams, these sprints are sometimes 2 or 3 days long, sometimes longer, depending on the scope of the project. And, and the issue with a software project is you don't necessarily know how hard each component in the software project is. And so starting out on a brand new project, right, you don't know how long it may take. And so you sort of find out as you go. And so the whole point for these sprint reflections in a business setting is to be able to rescope the project as it goes. And maybe you need to move resources from one part of the project to the other because you discover that part A, is going to take twice as long as part B. From an educational standpoint, the real advantage, right, is to actually consider whether your methods are working or not working. And I have found over the 4 or 5 years that I've been doing this, that some of the previous yous are incredibly stubborn. People will tell me, things aren't going well, but their method is perfect. I'm like, really? Are you sure? Right? Because ultimately, not that I'm shouting, right? But after 4 years of college, 6 years of graduate, 2 years of postdoctoral studies, and 20 years of teaching, I feel about 85 years old saying it that way, I could be better, right? And so it's quite likely that you could also. And, as I always tell first years, especially in the fall, you are all smart people. That's why you're here. Your methods work very well in high school, partly because you were smarter than the average student, right? By which I mean high schools are trying to get everyone through. And so they don't necessarily, right, attempt to challenge the very best students. And so you might never have been challenged in high school, or barely, right? Which means that you probably don't have as well developed a set of learning skills or study skills as you might because you didn't need them, right? And so part of the issue here, right, and at least thinking about different ways to do things, is to see if you can come up with more robust skills so that you don't hit the wall, right? The story I always tell of me is that it was really discomforting in my first year of graduate school when for the first time damn statistical mechanics, right? I took a course that really challenged me and I really didn't know what to do. I had never needed even to go see the instructor for help. I had never needed a tutor, right? And I really did not have good study skills because I hadn't really needed them. For most everything I took, even all through college, I could just sit there and not take notes. And I would remember enough of it to do well on the exams. And after all, what else did I need to do except pass the exams, right? For me, graduate school is a much different experience. There aren't a lot of exams, right? And so I really had to develop late in life better skills than I had. And even then, coming out of grad school, I would still say, right, my skills weren't as well evolved as they needed to be, right? And it's really easy to do because the system is not designed around learning. And so I always take the moment, even though it's not completely my fault, to apologize on behalf of the system, right? It is designed to compartmentalize learning in ways that don't necessarily make clear the connections, and in some cases don't even require that you learn. a former student of mine from about 8 or 9 years ago recently posted on Facebook that he was looking at the courses he took, and he said, I was just looking at the courses I took in college. How did I ever get a degree in biomedical engineering? and that's a useful reflection for him, although it might have been more useful in the middle of his college experience than after the fact, trying to decide exactly how all the courses managed to somehow fail him, right? And it's really because we're in a box checking environment, right? Even this course, right? While I recognize the flaws in the system, I've still got boxes you need to check, right? There's OWL homework that has to be done. There's sprint assignments that have to be done. There's projects that need to be turned in, right? And especially if you take courses as separate entities, when you get the A in 141, how much do you care about 141 when you're in 142? Or God forbid, 3 years from now when you're in a completely different course, right? The way it's compartmentalized almost suggests that there's no need to carry forward with any of the material. And so for the most part, courses don't tend to assess the kind of deep learning that we ultimately want to happen, right? And so, one way around that, right, is to chart your own path, right? Which again is hard to do and seems unnecessary, especially in what might be a low motivation course like chemistry. But, in previous years, when I asked people to reflect on, what went wrong and what went right and what they should do differently, right? I get somewhat disturbing responses, right? In that, right, people don't necessarily look for higher level cognitive skills, right? They tell me they need more practice problems. Specifically, they need me to provide more practice problem solutions, right? And I'm always suspicious of this because, again, I get the feeling that people feel that if they see enough worked out problems, they'll be able to work it out themselves, right? That's equivalent to my saying, I watched the whole football game yesterday, I can play like Patrick Mahomes, right? Not that practice problems aren't helpful, but again, they need to be read critically, they need to be thought about in detail, and you need to understand the reasons for the step rather than just see the steps, right? The same with the PowerPoint slides, right? They don't stand alone, right? They are useful in the context of the discussion around them. They're useful as a first pass at the material, but at some point you need to move beyond the example that's in the PowerPoint slides, right? And, all of these internet cheats, frankly, have a place. If you're looking to see solved problems, Shag and Course Hero have them, right? They're probably more useful if they're not the problem you're trying to solve, but a similar one, because then you at least have to think about what's similar and what's different, right? But they're really shortcuts to checking the box that don't necessarily require you to learn anything, right? And so, in a word, what I'm talking about is metacognition, which is sometimes defined as thinking about thinking, right? For those interested, and again, some point in your college career, it's not usually Gen Chem, although for some people it is, right? An article just came out how Gen Chem, University Physics 1 and Calc 1 combined end more college careers than any other course. Woohoo! There's really no advantage to that, right? But that number is relatively low, We're talking 10 or 15% of the class. 85% of you coast right through here without any problem. And so this is probably not the hurdle to you winning your Nobel Prize, right? But for those interested in becoming better learners for later in life, I do highly recommend Dr. McGuire's book. It's brilliant in its simplicity, and she has had tremendous success. She's currently, I believe, at LSU as the director of their Student Success Center. And she has some useful techniques, study skills, learning skills that are pretty easy to acquire, in which she's demonstrated to have really short-term effects. I mean, she had students who failed the first two exams and then got hundreds on the final. And so it didn't take 5 years to rehabilitate the students, right? It really just took a concerted effort over the course of several weeks for them to start getting more out of the course. And so if you're interested in that, I do recommend Dr. McGuire's book. I will post some of those strategies as we go for people that are interested in them. I do think there's wisdom there worth acquiring. Questions on any of that, syllabus related or otherwise? We don't have much time left due to technical difficulties, but really quickly, the first topic, which we will spend in a week and a half or 2 weeks on, is really our last sort of foray into the physical interactions of the molecules. As I said earlier, most of Chem 1, right, is the basics that includes things like physical properties, you know, melting points and boiling points and phase changes, right? Most of Chem 2 is about actual chemical reactions, right? How fast do they happen? What's the target amount of product, right? Different reaction types, right? But the one sort of overlap from Chem 1 to Chem 2 is this idea of intermolecular forces, because it really indicates how ensembles of molecules behave, right? If I have a single molecule, it doesn't do much of anything. But as soon as I have 2 or 3 molecules, it could start to do something, right? Most of the spring will be about what they do chemically. But even before you get to something chemical, if you've got 2 water molecules, right, they don't do a lot chemically, but you do have 2 water molecules, and they will, like any other 2 things, interact with each other. And so there's really only 3 things that can happen if you put 2 molecules into a container, right? They're either going to ignore each other because they have no interest in each other. There's no either attraction or repulsion for each other. Or more likely, there is some interaction between them, because if nothing else, if they try to occupy the same space, they can't, right? The only way they could totally ignore each other is if they're never in the same vicinity, right? And so in my never-ending attempt to anthropomorphize my molecules, right, they might either love or hate each other, meaning there's an attraction between the molecules or there's a repulsion between the molecules, right? And increasingly in recent years, I keep wanting to emphasize this. Keep in mind, molecules are moving. This is sometimes hard to remember because I keep throwing static pictures of them up here, right? And it's because they move that at some point they are likely to come near each other and then have to decide whether they love or hate each other. The only exception is 0 Kelvin, which by definition is where all molecular motion stops, right? But if I'm above 0 Kelvin, and we always are really, right, the molecules are moving. I don't know if this, well, given the time, maybe I'll play these videos at the start of class on Wednesday. But our first order of business before we get to actual, oh, there it is now. Yeah. There's your preview of Wednesday. Somebody animated it and put a song to it. But right, molecules do move. That's how they find each other, right? For both interactions that are physical and chemical reactions, right? You can't very well react with a chemical that you aren't near. And so this idea of molecules moving underlies everything we ultimately do with them. But again, that will have to wait till Wednesday. Any other general questions or problems? All the Zooms are recorded and posted if you want to catch up on them later. I will put them in two places. They automatically appear under the Zoom link on my courses. I will also put them with better identifiers in the content section of my courses. If you have any questions or problems, here I am. Otherwise, I will see you Wednesday when hopefully everything works better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.